It started with whispers, the kind that crawl behind curtains and slam shut blinds. A new neighbor moved in, but his skin was the only crime they saw. The HOA's rules became weapons, the meetings became trials, and every fence was drawn, not in wood, but in prejudice. Threats escalated, silence cracked, and bias dressed itself in badges it never earned. They thought they were chasing weakness, but they had no idea they were provoking a man forged in fire, a Navy SEAL who had faced enemies far greater than them. This is not just a story of confrontation, but of survival, betrayal, resistance, and the haunting justice that comes when truth refuses to stay silent. The sun stretched its golden fingers across the neat rows of suburban lawns, catching the shimmer of sprinklers and the sparkle of windshields. The cul-de-sac looked like a postcard, manicured hedges, white fences, and mailboxes all standing in disciplined lines. To an outsider, this was a peaceful community where every home carried the weight of a carefully curated image. Marcus Reed pushed his mower slowly across the grass, his broad shoulders glistening with sweat. The rhythmic hum of the machine, the scent of fresh-cut blades, the distant laughter of children riding bicycles. It was the kind of ordinary afternoon he craved after years of chaos overseas. He paused, cut the engine, and leaned on the handle, breathing, steady eyes, scanning not out of paranoia, but habit. Years in combat zones had carved instincts into him that never dulled, but here, he told himself, this was home. Here, he was just a man with a house, a lawn, and the hope of blending into normal life. A voice cut across the street. Afternoon, Mr. Reed. It was Mr. Henderson, his next-door neighbor, retired Air Force, older, with a limp that told stories even when he didn't. Marcus gave him a nod and a rare, faint smile. Afternoon, sir. How's the leg today? Still bad enough to get me out of mowing. Perks of age, son. Henderson chuckled. Yours looks sharp. Neatest lawn on the block. Marcus shrugged. Discipline. Hard to unlearn. But Henderson's smile faded as his eyes flicked toward the end of the street. Marcus followed the gaze. A pair of homeowners stood under the shade of a birch tree, whispering, their eyes darting toward Marcus and then away, their arms folded, their lips tight, their posture stiff, subtle signs he had grown used to seeing. He turned back to Henderson, who muttered, "Ignore 'em. Some folks got nothing better to do than measure who belongs and who don't." Marcus didn't reply. He simply restarted the mower. Later that evening, Marcus sat on his porch with a glass of water. The crickets hummed, porch lights flickered on, and cars pulled into driveways. He allowed himself a breath of calm until a voice called out again. "Hey, excuse me." It was a woman he hadn't met before. Blonde hair, pulled tight, clipboard in her arm, an HOA badge swinging on a lanyard around her neck. Her smile was polite, but her tone was firm, like a teacher correcting a student. "You're Marcus, right? New homeowner at 300. Yes, ma'am." He straightened, polite but guarded. "Well, welcome. I'm Mrs. Whitmore, on the HOA board. Just a quick reminder, we do have guidelines here. For instance, vehicles should be in garages overnight, not on driveways, and, well, American flags are acceptable, but other banners or items in the yard may need approval." Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. He had nothing in his yard but the mower. Understood. She gave him a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We like to keep things uniform. Keeps property values high. You know, I get it." His voice was calm, almost too calm. Her eyes lingered on him a moment too long, like she was searching for something. Finally, she said, "Well, welcome to the neighborhood," and walked away. Marcus exhaled slowly. Henderson's voice came from his porch, half in shadow. "First warning." Marcus looked over. What that was. Henderson nodded grimly. "You'll see, this HOA rules ain't just rules. They're weapons when they want 'em to be." Nights settled in. Marcus sat inside, the soft hum of the ceiling fan filling the silence. He glanced at the framed medals on his shelf, tokens of a life he rarely spoke about. He wasn't here to relive it. He was here to escape it. Yet, as he stared at the shadows stretching across his quiet home, something gnawed at him. He'd been in hostile territory before. And though this was supposed to be different, he recognized the pattern, the looks, the whispers, the rules bent to fit whoever the enemy was supposed to be. And this time, the enemy was him. The next morning, Marcus was on his porch again, sipping black coffee. A pair of teenagers rode by on bikes, waving. He raised a hand in return. But behind them, Mrs. Whitmore stood at the end of the street, again clipboard, ready eyes scanning his driveway. Henderson shuffled over with his cane. Keep your head high, son. They don't know who they're looking at. Marcus gave a short, wry laugh. And they don't need to. But even as he said it, he knew the storm hadn't even begun. Morning light filtered through blinds as Marcus tightened the laces on his running shoes. The streets were quiet, dew still clinging to lawns, and his footsteps echoed in the crisp air. He welcomed the rhythm of ruining a discipline that steadied his thoughts, but as he rounded the cul-de-sac, he caught it again. Voices, low, hushed but sharp enough to slice through the morning calm. Doesn't he ever work? Looks like he's always watching. Not friendly either. Just stares. Gives me the creeps. Marcus slowed, his gaze catching the two women from across the street, coffee mugs in hand. Their conversation stopped the second he looked at them. One forced a smile. The other just turned away. He jogged past without a word, but inside, a familiar tension stirred, the kind that told him he wasn't simply being noticed, he was being judged. Later that day, he pulled into his driveway with groceries. As he carried the bags, Mrs. Whitmore appeared again, clipboard tucked under her arm like a weapon. Mr. Reed, her tone was clipped. We need to address something. Marcus set the bags down on the porch rail, his face calm but eyes sharp. What's the issue? Well, according to Section 4, subsection C of HOA guidelines, trash cans must be brought in no later than 9 a.m. on collection day. Yours remained visible until at least noon. We've had complaints. Marcus raised a brow. Complaints over trash cans. Rules are rules, she said firmly. We all follow them. It's about respect for the community. He studied her, silent for a moment. Respect works both ways, Mrs. Whitmore. Her smile stiffened. I'm sure you understand. I'll mark it as a warning for now. She scribbled something on her clipboard and walked off briskly. That evening, Henderson shuffled over, lowering himself into a porch chair beside Marcus. His cane leaned against the railing. They hit you yet? Trash cans? Henderson let out a dry laugh. Same for me, years back. My first month here. Only difference. I got one warning. They'll keep stacking 'em. Watch. Marcus sipped his water, saying nothing. You know what the whispers are, right? Henderson continued. Not the cans, not the flags. It's you, your face, your skin. They call it rules, but rules bend real easy when they want to push someone out. Marcus's jaw tightened. Let them whisper. Henderson shook his head. Don't fool yourself. Whispers grow teeth. The next day, Marcus worked in his garage, sorting old boxers, when a shadow fell across the driveway. He turned to find a man in a polo shirt, HOA badge pinned to his chest. Afternoon. You Marcus? Yes. Board asked me to check this vehicle here. He gestured to Marcus's truck. It's parked at an angle that slightly extends past the driveway line. That violates Section 7. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag. The truck's not on the street. Doesn't matter. Guidelines say driveway use should maintain alignment, aesthetic consistency. Marcus's tone grew sharper. So, half a tire tread over concrete is a violation. The man shifted, uncomfortable under Marcus's stare. I don't make the rules. I just enforce them. Funny, Marcus muttered, because it looks like you're making them up right now. The man cleared his throat. Another warning will be issued. Please cooperate. And just like that, he retreated, clipboard in hand. That night, Marcus sat alone in his living room, lights, dim ceiling fan humming. He replayed the encounters in his head, the whispers, the clipboard, the rules that seemed to multiply the moment his presence became inconvenient. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We're watching. Don't push your luck. Marcus stared at it, his grip tightening around the phone. Heroes pulled the curtain slightly, scanning the quiet street. Every porch light looked the same. Every house seemed to sleep. Yet he knew someone out there had crossed the line. The next morning, Henderson knocked on his door. Marcus opened it, jaw still tense from the night before. You look like hell, son. Marcus handed him the phone, showing the text. Henderson cursed under his breath. Knew it. They don't stop at whispers. Anonymous threats. Over what? Trash cans and trucks. Marcus's voice was calm but edged with steel. No, Henderson said grimly. Over you. Because you don't fit the picture they painted of this street, and they'll keep poking till you either bow or break. Marcus slipped the phone into his pocket. His eyes were steady now, the same look Henderson had seen on soldiers heading into missions. they think I'll break. The HOA board might have thought they were dealing with just another homeowner, one they could pressure, intimidate, and push out with their paper-thin authority. What they didn't know was that Marcus Reed had faced enemies far more dangerous than clipboards and whispered threats, and if they wanted a war, they were inching closer to finding out what kind of man lived at 3. The community center smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant. Folding chairs lined up in tight rows, a long table stretched across the front, and behind it sat the self-appointed guardians of order, the HOA board. Mrs. Whitmore sat in the center, clipboard poised like a gavel. Marcus entered quietly, hands in his jacket pockets, his eyes scanning the room. Conversations paused for a fraction of a second. Heads turned. Then the whispers resumed, softer this time but unmistakable. That's him. Yeah, the new one, the one who doesn't fit. He's already gotten 2 warnings. Marcus took a seat near the back, posture straight, face unreadable. Henderson shuffled in after him, cane tapping against the floor, and lowered himself into the chair beside Marcus. Stay calm, Henderson muttered. They want you to snap. Mrs. Whitmore tapped her clipboard, calling the room to attention. Good evening, neighbors. Tonight, we'll be addressing community concerns. Our goal, as always, is to maintain harmony, safety, and property values in Maplewood Estates. The crowd murmured approval. Marcus's eyes flicked over the faces, smiling, nodding, clapping lightly as if they were at a sermon. Whitmore continued. First, we've had repeated concerns regarding trash can compliance. It's important for everyone to bring them in promptly to preserve the appearance of our neighborhood. Her eyes darted just for a second toward Marcus, subtle but sharp. Then came the next item, vehicle alignment. Some residents have been careless with parking, allowing cars or trucks to extend beyond driveways. This disrupts the uniform look we strive for. Again, her gaze flicked in his direction. Marcus sat motionless, but Henderson leaned closer. They're laying the ground, building their case. Finally, Whitmore set her clipboard down. And lastly, we've had multiple complaints regarding behavior. A certain resident has been seen observing others, standing outside late, and creating discomfort among neighbors. This is a community, not a surveillance zone. We want everyone to feel safe. Now the gazes weren't subtle. Dozens of eyes turned toward Marcus. A woman in the second row raised her hand. Yes, I've seen him just standing in his yard at night. It feels threatening. Another chimed in. He never waves, never smiles. It's unsettling. Marcus slowly stood. The room fell quiet. His voice was calm, measured, carrying a weight that silenced the whispers. Standing in my yard, drinking water, bringing in trash cans, parking in my own driveway. These are the crimes. A man at the front frowned. It's not the acts, it's the tone, the impression you give. Marcus tilted his head slightly. The impression of existing. A ripple of discomfort passed through the room. Henderson smirked, whispering, Now you've got M squirming. Mrs. Whitmore cleared her throat sharply. Mr. Reed, this isn't personal. We enforce the rules equally. You happen to have several violations. Marcus's gaze locked on her. Show me the records of everyone cited for the same. Every late trash can, every crooked car, or is it just me? Her face stiffened. She fumbled with her clipboard. That's confidential. No, Marcus said firmly. That's selective. The air thickened. A man in the crowd muttered, Why is he being so hostile? Marcus turned toward him. Hostile? I'm standing here, speaking, asking the same question anyone else would ask if they were singled out. The man shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Whitmore tried to regain control. Perhaps this discussion should end here. The board will handle it privately. But Marcus's voice cut through again, steady, deliberate. I served this country for 20 years. I fought in places where real threats lived. I came back to build a quiet life. And yet here, in my own yard, I'm treated as if I'm trespassing on what I own. Gasps echoed. A few faces softened, doubt flickering in their expressions. Henderson's lips curled into a satisfied grin. That'll shake 'em. But Whitmore wasn't rattled. Her tone sharpened. Mr. Reed, military service is commendable, but it doesn't exempt you from community standards. If you feel Maplewood Estates is not the right fit, there are always other neighborhoods. There it was, the not-so-subtle push to leave. Marcus stood still, eyes scanning the room. I'm not going anywhere. His voice dropped, quiet but cutting. And you don't get to decide who belongs. For a moment, Silence. Then the meeting dissolved into murmurs again. Some whispered accusations, others uneasy support. Whitmore banged her clipboard on the table. Meeting adjourned. Marcus turned, walking toward the exit. Henderson followed slowly, cane tapping against the tile. Outside, the night air was cooler, fresher, but carried the weight of the storm brewing. They wanted you out, Henderson muttered. Tonight was just the opening shot. Marcus looked at the rows of identical houses, each porch light glowing like a watchful eye. His voice was quiet, but resolute. Then they'll learn what it means to push the wrong man. Rain slicked the pavement that night, each streetlight reflecting in rippling puddles. Marcus sat in his living room, blinds half drawn, watching droplets streak the glass. The neighborhood looked calm, but his phone still carried the anonymous text, "We're watching." A knock at the door broke the silence. He opened it to find Henderson, his old neighbor, damp from the drizzle. "They're turning the screws tighter," Henderson said, stepping inside. "You hear what they pulled today?" Marcus shook his head. "They sent letters. Half the block got a notice about security risks." Guess whose name kept showing up in whispers? Marcus's jaw tensed. "Security risks. I mow my lawn, park my truck, drink water on my porch. That's the risk." Henderson lowered his voice. "It ain't about what you do. It's about what you are. They want you boxed in, cornered, until you either explode or leave." Marcus poured him a glass of water. "And if I don't do either," Henderson smirked, "then they'll come knocking harder." 2 days later, Marcus found the first real sign, a spray-painted word scrawled across his mailbox, "Out." The red paint dripped like blood, glaring in the morning sun. He stood over it, calm on the outside, though a storm churned behind his eyes. A jogger slowed, glanced at the mailbox, then at Marcus. Without a word, the jogger sped up, avoiding his gaze. Mrs. Whitmore appeared moments later, as if summoned by scandal, clipboard under her arm, lips pursed. "Mr. Reed, I see there's been vandalism. Unfortunate. But of course, you'll need to have it repainted immediately. HOA guidelines require uniformity." Marcus turned to her slowly. "Someone threatens me on my own property, and your concern is uniformity." Her tone didn't falter. "Rules are rules. We can't allow eyes." Marcus stared at her in silence, until she shifted uncomfortably. Finally, he said, "I'll handle it." That evening, Henderson came by again. "They tagged your place." Marcus nodded. "This ain't whispers anymore. They're drawing lines, in the dirt, daring you to cross." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "They already crossed mine." The next HOA inspection came fast. 2 men in windbreakers showed up in a golf cart, both with badges clipped to their shirts, not police badges, but HOA security. They carried themselves like authority anyway. "Sir," one said, approaching Marcus's yard, "we've had multiple complaints about disturbances, loud noises, late at night." Marcus raised a brow. "Disturbances? I don't even play music." "Complaints are complaints. We'll need to document this as a violation." Marcus's voice dropped, calm but dangerous. "Document a lie if you want, but do it knowing I'll fight every word." The man shifted, his partner scribbling something on a pad. "Threats won't help your case." Marcus stepped closer, towering over them, his voice low. "If you think this is a threat, you've never been in a real fight." The men exchanged uneasy glances before retreating to their golf cart. Henderson watched from his porch, shaking his head. "They're poking the bare sun. And they don't even know the claws you've got." That night, Marcus sat with his lights off, watching. The street was quiet, but he could feel it ties on him. He thought back to deployments, 2 nights, where silence meant danger waiting. This was no battlefield, but the air felt the same. His phone buzzed again. Another text: "Leave, or the next visit won't be friendly." Marcus exhaled, steady and slow, then typed back for the first time. "Come find out." The following morning, Mrs. Whitmore stood at the end of his driveway with 2 board members. Their faces were taut, rehearsed with polite smiles. "Mr. Reed," she began, "we're concerned about escalating tensions. Perhaps Maplewood Estates isn't the best fit for you." Marcus's voice was quiet. "Even, this is my home. I bought it. I pay for it. I live here. I'm not leaving." One board member forced a chuckle. "No one's saying you have to leave, but neighbors are uncomfortable. A sale might be best for everyone." Marcus stepped closer, his eyes locked on theirs. "I fought to protect freedoms bigger than this street. And you think you can scare me out of a house? Try harder." Whitmore stiffened, clutching her clipboard like a shield. We'll see about that. That night, Henderson came over again. He lowered his voice as he leaned on his cane. You're mocking your stand. But listen, when lines get drawn, someone always crosses them. You ready for that? Marcus didn't answer right away. He stared out at the dark street, his face calm, unreadable. Finally, he said, I've faced worse. And I didn't survive all that just to bow down here. Henderson gave a slow nod. Then buckle up, 'cause they ain't done. The neighborhood looked the same: trimmed hedges, painted shutters, the faint hum of sprinklers, but Marcus could feel the shift. The whispers had grown teeth. It began on a Tuesday morning. He stepped outside to find a bright yellow paper taped to his front door. Notice of violation. He read aloud, his voice low. Improper conduct, threatening behavior, security breach, immediate compliance required. Marcus crumpled it in his fist. Security breach. For living in my house. Across the street, a group of neighbors lingered, pretending to water plants or check mailboxes. Their eyes stayed on him. Henderson appeared at his fence, cane tapping the ground. They're laying the groundwork, son. Painting you as a danger. That way, when they come harder, nobody asks questions. Marcus's jaw flexed. Let them come. That evening, the HOA cops arrived. Same golf cart, same windbreakers, same false badges. But this time, they weren't casual. They carried flashlights, radios, and one had a taser strapped to his belt. Mr. Reed, the taller one, said, stepping onto the lawn. We need to speak with you. Now. Marcus met them at the edge of the driveway. You're trespassing. We're acting under HOA authority. The shorter one replied, chest puffed, multiple complaints. Aggressive behavior. Harassment of neighbors. We have to document and enforce. Marcus's voice was calm steel. Aggressive. You came to my door, armed, and called me aggressive. The taller one smirked. Tone like that only proves the point. Might have to escalate this. Marcus leaned forward slightly. Escalate it, and you'll regret it. For a beat, silence hung heavy. Radios crackled. A curtain across the street twitched. The shorter one scribbled furiously on his clipboard. Final warning. Cooperate, or consequences. Marcus stepped back slowly, hands at his sides. You want consequences. You'll find them. The men exchanged uneasy glances, then retreated, but not far. They parked at the corner, golf cart idling, lights on. Watching. Later that night, Marcus heard the crunch of footsteps outside his window. He killed the lights and waited, heart steady but sharp. Shadows moved across his yard, whispered voices, a metallic clink against his fence. Then spray paint. He yanked the door open. Hey! Two figures bolted. One dropped the can, red paint hissing across the driveway. Marcus chased them halfway down the block before they leaped into the waiting golf cart. Tires screeched, and they sped off. He stood in the dark, chest heaving, staring at the fresh scar across his property. Get out. Morning brought the spectacle. Neighbors gathered in little knots, whispering behind coffee mugs. Mrs. Whitmore appeared with her clipboard, lips pursed in performative dismay. Oh dear, she said, eyeing the vandalism. Such hostility. But Mr. Reed, I must remind you it's your responsibility to repaint HOA standards. Marcus turned to her, voice low. Your people did this. Her eyes widened, feigning innocence. Excuse me, you heard me. Your so-called security. They're the only ones bold enough to pull this stunt and dumb enough to leave their cart tires all over the street. Whitmore stiffened. Baseless accusations. If you can't adapt to the community spirit, perhaps Maplewood Estates isn't for you. Marcus stepped closer, his presence towering. Listen carefully. I'm not going anywhere. Not for you, not for your fake cops, not for anyone. You want me out. You'll have to drag me. Her mask cracked for the first time, anger flickering behind her eyes. We'll see about that. She spun on her heel and stormed off. That afternoon, Henderson knocked on Marcus's door, holding a folded paper. They slid this under my door by mistake. Thought you should see it. Marcus unfolded it. HOA emergency session, discussion of security risks and removal procedures. He read it twice, jaw tightening. They're planning something. Henderson nodded grimly. They're building a case to call the real cops. Paint you like a threat, so when they bring the law down, folk'll cheer instead of question. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Then, I'll be ready. The next confrontation came sooner than expected. Evening again. This time, streets slick and shining. Marcus heard the familiar hum of the golf cart, louder than usual. When he stepped outside, there were 4 men this time. Same badges. Same WINDBREAKERS. The leader raised a flashlight, blinding him. Marcus Reed stepped down to the sidewalk. Marcus didn't move. On what authority? You've violated multiple HOA codes. You're a danger to this community. We're placing you under. He cut him off with a sharp laugh. Under what? Your fake arrest. You're not cops. You're clowns with clipboards. One of the men shifted, hand brushing the taser at his belt. Don't make this harder. Marcus took a deliberate step forward into the beam of light. His voice dropped to a low growl, steady as thunder. You think you can scare me? I've stared down men with rifles, bombs, whole armies. And you bring golf carts. The leader faltered, flashlight trembling just slightly. You've got no authority, Marcus continued, eyes sweeping over them. And the more you push, the closer you get to learning who I really am. The words landed heavy, echoing in the rain. None of them replied. Radios crackled, hands twitched, but no one moved. Finally, the leader barked, "We'll be back, and next time, you won't be laughing." They retreated, cart whining as it disappeared down the block. Marcus stood alone in the rain, the storm soaking him through. But he didn't flinch. He felt it now. Lines weren't just drawn. They were being crossed, and the fight was only beginning. Rain hadn't let up for days. The neighborhood streets glistened like oil-slick mirrors, and the usual suburban calm now carried a hum of unease. Curtains twitched more often. Sidewalk whispers died as soon as Marcus appeared. Something was building like thunder before a storm. Marcus felt it in his bones. Years in combat had taught him to recognize when enemies were preparing their strike. The warning it came from Henderson. He appeared at Marcus's porch one night, soaked from head to toe, cane tapping like a metronome of urgency. They called a closed meeting, he rasped. Didn't want me there, but I caught enough. They ain't talking citations anymore, son, they're talking removal. Marcus frowned. Removal, illegal eviction, with Mossop there, bringing the golf cart brigade in force. And if that don't work, they'll call the county sheriff. Only by the time the cops show, the story'll be written. You're violent, dangerous, threatening folks in their own homes. Marcus exhaled slowly, steadying his voice. They're framing me for the crime of existing. Henderson's gaze was heavy. They want a spectacle. A black man dragged off his porch. That way, every other one of us remembers the rules. Marcus's jaw flexed. Not this time. The setup the next day. The notice appeared on his door. Final HOA enforcement action. Mandatory compliance required. Marcus read it once, then pinned it back to the wood with his combat knife. A message. By sunset, the sound of the golf carts filled the air. Not one, not two. 4 of them, headlights cutting through the misty rain, radios buzzing. The men climbed out like they owned the block windbreakers, zipped, tasers visible, clipboards ready like weapons. Mrs. Whitmore trailed behind, umbrella in hand, a smug glint in her eye. Marcus Reed, she called, voice carrying, across the wet pavement. By authority of Maplewood Estates Homeowners Association, you are hereby in violation of community safety standards. You are ordered to vacate immediately. Marcus stood on his porch, arms folded. And if I don't? Her smile thinned. Then enforcement proceeds. The confrontation. The tallest of the cops stepped forward, hand hovering near his taser. Step down, sir. We don't want this to get ugly. Marcus's laugh was low, almost pitying. Ugly. You came to my home, in the rain, for deep, waving toys on your belt's end. You're worried about ugly. Another man spoke up. Neighbors reported threats, intimidation, property damage. You left us no choice. Marcus's eyes sharpened. Neighbors didn't report that. You planted it. You vandalized my house and wrote the story yourselves. Silence, heavy. Then Whitmore cut in, sharp as a knife. Enough. Proceed. The men advanced, water splashing around their boots. Marcus stepped down from the porch slowly, each motion deliberate. Rain trickled over his face, but his gaze never wavered. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. I'm not who you think I am, the leader sneered. You're a homeowner who doesn't follow rules. That's all we need to know. Marcus's voice dropped an octave. But lethal. No, I'm a man who's been trained to end wars, and you just brought one to my doorstep. The break. They lunged. 2 moved to grab his arms. 1 reached for his taser. Another circled wide. Marcus shifted like water. A twist of his wrist sent one man's arm snapping backward with a scream. A sidestep dropped the second face first into the mud. The taser crackled, but Marcus stripped it from its wielder before the trigger pulled, tossing it into the rain. Gasps erupted from behind curtains. Neighbors pressed against glass, breath-fogging windows. Whitmore shouted, "Resist! Take him down!" But the men hesitated. One clutched his broken arm. Another struggled to rise, eyes wide with disbelief. Marcus stood in the center, barely breathing hard. "You still want to play cops?" he asked, voice echoing across the cold sack. The leader cursed, charging with blind anger. Marcus caught him mid-stride, pivoted, and sent him crashing into the side of the golf cart. Metal groaned, headlights flickered, and the man slid down in a heap. Rain hammered the silence that followed. The reveal. Marcus straightened, scanning the terrified faces before him. His voice carried now, not just to them, but to every window and porch in Maplewood. "I told you, I'm not what you think. You came to drag a man off his own property. But the man you picked isn't just a homeowner." He stepped closer to the trembling officers, eyes hard. "I'm a Navy SEAL. I've been where real law doesn't reach. I've fought men who had the power to burn cities, and I'm still here because I don't lose." The words cut through the rain like thunder. Even Henderson, watching from across the street, felt the air change. The balance of fear had shifted. "You came with fake badges and golf carts," Marcus said, voice dropping to a deadly calm. "Now you know the truth. You're not in control here." The collapse. Whitmore's mask cracked. This is assault. You'll go to prison for this." Marcus turned, slow and deliberate, his stare pinning her in place. "No, what this is exposure. Every neighbor here saw you bring armed men to harass me. Every camera caught you authorizing it." Her umbrella trembled. You can't try me," Marcus snapped. From the shadows, phones glowed. Neighbors had been filming, silently, hungrily. The story was already leaving Maplewood. Whitmore's voice broke, shrill now. "Stand down, all of you. Retreat." The men scrambled, dragging their injured comrades, piling into the carts. Engines sputtered to life, tires splashed, and within seconds, they vanished into the rain-soaked night. Only Whitmore remained, rooted on the sidewalk, pale beneath her umbrella. Marcus stepped closer, his presence filling the space between them. "You wanted a spectacle. Now you've got one. But it's not the story you wrote, it's the one I just told." She stumbled backward, nearly slipping, then fled into the darkness. The aftermath. Henderson limped across the street, cane sinking into puddles. He looked at Marcus with something between awe and fear. "Lord Almighty, son, you just shook the whole damn hive." Marcus's chest rose and fell, steady but heavy. "They thought they could break me with fear. But they forgot they've lived with fear. I've fought through worse than this block could dream of." Henderson nodded slowly. "You turned the tables tonight, but they ain't done. Folks like Whitmore don't quit. They double down." Marcus glanced at the spray-painted words still faintly visible on his driveway. "Get out. I'm not leaving," he said quietly. "Not until the whole truth comes out." The storm finally broke, rain easing into mist. But for Maplewood Estates, the real storm had just begun. Marcus stood on his porch again, soaked and unflinching, staring out at the quiet houses. Every eye in the neighborhood had seen. Every whisper tomorrow would carry his name. The lines weren't just drawn anymore, they had been crossed, broken, and redrawn in blood and rain. Marcus knew the fight wasn't over, but for the first time, the fear wasn't his. Morning came like a slap. The rain had stopped, but Maplewood Estates woke restless, buzzing like a hornet's nest that had been kicked. For Marcus, the silence outside his windows was louder than any storm. The streets were too clean, too still, as if waiting for something to arrive. It didn't take long. The letter by mid-afternoon, a certified envelope sat in his mailbox. Notice of violation and community hearing. Marcus ripped it open at his kitchen table. The language was cold, corporate, designed to suffocate. "You are hereby cited for threats, assault, and gross violation of HOA bylaws. Attendance at the emergency hearing is mandatory. Failure to appear may result in immediate lien, eviction proceedings, and referral to law enforcement." His hands tightened on the paper until it crumpled. The phone rang. Henderson's voice rasped through the receiver. "They're hitting back. Fast, son. Saw the board members at Whitmore's place all night. She's rallying the whole committee, and I hear tell they've called in the county sheriff this time. Not no golf carts, real uniforms. Marcus exhaled through his nose. So now it's official. It's war, Henderson said flatly. The meeting that evening, Marcus arrived at the clubhouse. The place smelled of coffee and bleach, the overhead lights buzzing, rows of folding chairs were filled, neighbors leaning forward, whispering, glancing at Marcus as he walked in. At the front sat Whitmore, pristine in a pearl blouse, lips tight in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The rest of the board flanked her like jurors already convinced of guilt. Mr. Reed, Whitmore began sweetly, tapping the gavel. Thank you for attending. We are here to address your escalating violations. And Marcus cut her off. Escalating violations? You mean your failed stunt last night? The neighborhood saw everything. Gasps rippled through the room. Whitmore's smile sharpened. Ah, yes, about that. Several residents have come forward with reports of your violent behavior, broken arms, property damage, intimidation. We have sworn statements. A man from the crowd stood, one of the so-called enforcers, arm in a sling. His voice trembled but carried. He attacked us. We were just enforcing the rules. He's dangerous. Lies dripped like acid. Boff's fists clenched, but his voice stayed level. You trespassed on my property. You assaulted me first. Every neighbor saw it, and some of them recorded it. Phones lit up in the back rows. A murmur ran through the crowd. Whitmore's eyes narrowed, but she pressed forward. This hearing isn't about recordings, it's about community safety, and it is the opinion of this board that your presence here constitutes a danger. The doors opened. 2 sheriff's deputies walked in, uniforms crisp, hands resting near their belts. The crowd parted, murmuring louder now. Voice rose, triumphant. Thank you for coming, officers. This man has resisted our authority, endangered our members, and assaulted residents. We are requesting his immediate removal pending investigation. One deputy glanced at Marcus's name. Marcus Reed, he said evenly. Recognition flickered in the man's eyes, but he masked it quickly. Sir, would you step outside with us? Marcus didn't move. On what charge? The second deputy cleared his throat. We've had multiple complaints, assault, disturbing the peace. Marcus's voice cut through like a blade. You mean you've had multiple lies? You're about to drag a black homeowner out of his own community meeting, based on hearsay from a board trying to cover its tracks. The room buzzed hotter. Some nodded in agreement, others shifted uncomfortably. Henderson, from the back, called out, He's right. Y'all didn't see what really happened. You just heard Whitmore's version. The deputies hesitated. One leaned toward Whitmore. Ma'am, do you have evidence? Whitmore's eyes gleamed. We have witness statements, officer, and the bylaws are clear. Residents must comply with HOA authority. He refused. He threatened violence. Marcus took a step forward, calm but unyielding. I didn't threaten. I defended, and I'll defend again if I have to. The deputies stiffened. Tension coiled like a live wire. Then a voice broke through. I saw everything. Gasps. A young woman in the third row stood, phone in hand, screen glowing. She turned at outward video footage spilling across the room. The clip showed the night before, 4 men charging Marcus, taser crackling, fists raised. Then Marcus disarming, deflecting, defending. No aggression, just precision and restraint. The room erupted. Voices clashed, chairs scraped, whispers turned to shouts. Look at that. He barely touched them until they attacked first. They lied. Whitmore's face drained of color. That footage is doctored. No, it ain't. Henderson barked, cane slamming the floor. That's the truth. Y'all tried to railroad this man because of the color of his skin. The retreat, the deputies exchanged glances. One spoke, low but firm. Ma'am, this doesn't look like assault. Looks like self-defense. Whitmore sputtered. You can't let him stay here. He's dangerous. But the tide had shifted. Neighbors who had been silent now spoke up. He's never bothered me. He keeps his property clean. You're just targeting him. The noise swelled until it drowned Whitmore's protests. Finally, the deputies stepped back. We can't arrest him on this. Not with evidence like that. Whitmore's hand shook round the gavel. This meeting is adjourned, she snapped, slamming it down before storming out. The board followed, pale and shaken. The cost. The crowd dispersed slowly, buzzing with tension and revelation. Some avoided Marcus's eyes, guilty. Others nodded at him for the first time. Henderson shuffled up, eyes burning with fierce pride. You turned the whole room, son. She tried to bury you, but you just dug her grave instead. Marcus exhaled, wariness tugging at his bones. She's not finished. People like Whitmore don't stop when they're cornered. They strike harder. Hendricks' grip on his cane tightened. Then, we'll be ready. You ain't fighting alone anymore. Marcus looked around the now empty hall, the folding chairs, the scattered papers, the echo of raised voices. The truth had bought him time, but not peace. Whitmore had lost control tonight, but he knew what came next. Retaliation wouldn't stop at bylaws or staged hearings. It would go deeper: legal battles, smear campaigns, maybe worse. And when it did, Marcus would have to decide whether to keep playing defense or go on the offensive. The night air was cold when he stepped outside. Above Maplewood Estates, the clouds parted just enough to reveal a pale sliver of moon. The storm had paused, but the war was only gathering. Marcus walked home steady, the crumpled notice still in his pocket. One thought burned with every step. They wanted to break him with fear, but fear was a weapon he knew better than anyone else. The night before felt like borrowed time. Marcus sat in his living room, blinds closed, lights dimmed. His phone buzzed endlessly, neighbors texting shaky support, Henderson calling twice to warn him of whispers. Rumors spread faster than fact. Some said the HOA was filing lawsuits. Others claimed Whitmore was bringing in county inspectors, even federal contacts. Marcus knew the truth. Cornered predators strike hardest. And tomorrow, Whitmore would play her final card. Morning tension by dawn. Maplewood Estates didn't feel like home. Patrol cars cruised slowly, windows tinted. HOA flyers appeared on doors. Protect our community. Remove the threat. Marcus crumpled one in his fist. The ink smudged across his palm like blood. A knock rattled his door. Henderson stood outside, cane tapping impatiently. She's calling an emergency board meeting. Not like the last one this time. She invited outsiders, lawyers, reporters. Whole damn circus. Marcus's jaw tightened. She wants a spectacle. She wants a lynching with paperwork, Henderson said bluntly. She wants you humiliated in front of cameras. Marcus looked past him, across the street. Whitmore's porch was crowded, her board allies, men in suits, deputies leaning against their cars. She was ready for war. So be it, Marcus said. I've fought worse. The gathering by noon. The clubhouse was packed to suffocation. News vans lined the street, cameras flashing as neighbors filed in. The air hummed with tension, whispers like static. At the front, Whitmore sat tall, her pearl blouse replaced with a blazer-polished political. A lawyer stood at her side, papers stacked like weapons. Today, she began, voice carrying with rehearsed control, this community decides whether we stand united under law and order, or whether we allow a violent agitator to endanger us all. Murmurs rippled, cameras zoomed. Marcus stepped inside. The room turned toward him like a wave. He walked steady, shoulders squared, eyes locked on Whitmore. Every step was deliberate, measured. He took his seat alone at the front table. Across from her, the lawyer cleared his throat. Mr. Reed, you stand accused of repeated violations, threats, physical assault, property damage, and disruption of community order. The HOA moves for your immediate removal and eviction under emergency powers. Whitmore's smile gleamed. You don't belong here. The crossfire. Marcus leaned forward, voice calm. You're not talking about bylaws, you're talking about me. A black homeowner you couldn't control. Say it plain. Gasps broke out. Cameras whirred. Whitmore's eyes flashed. This isn't about race, it's about your behavior. Then why'd your men storm my lawn? Why'd they bring tasers instead of paperwork? The lawyer interrupted. Sir, please confine yourself to facts. Marcus's gaze cut through him. The fact is I defended myself, and the whole neighborhood saw it. From the crowd, the young woman from before raised her phone again. Video flickered across screens. Gasps, murmurs, shouts. The lawyer stammered. That doesn't excuse, it exposes, Marcus snapped. Exposes what happens when people like Whitmore abuse power, weaponize fear, and think no one will fight back. Whitmore's veneer cracked. You don't get to lecture us about power. You don't get to come into our neighborhood, Marcus cut in, voice rising. I live here. I bought my home. I pay my dues. I served this country while you sat in gated comfort. Don't you dare say I don't belong. The room erupted. The collapse reporters shouted questions. Neighbors argued openly, now voices clashing, some siding with Marcus, others parroting Whitmore's line about safety and order. The deputies shifted uneasily. The lawyer shuffled papers, lost. Whitmore slammed the gavel. Order. This man is dangerous. He attacked our enforcers. He defies authority, and your authority ends at the truth. Marcus said coldly, "You don't own me. You don't own this community." Her voice sharpened, desperate. "You think your military past makes you untouchable. This isn't war, Mr. Reed. This is order, and I will have it." Marcus stood slowly. The room hushed. His voice was low, steady. "You're right about one thing. This isn't war. War has rules, honor, enemies who face you. Hidden, what you've done here, this is cowardice. Hiding behind bylaws, sending thugs at night, smearing a man because of his skin. That's not order. That's fear." Silence. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. The break Whitmore's face twisted. The polished mask was gone, replaced by raw venom. She rose, pointing a trembling finger at Marcus. "You people always playing the victim, always twisting the story. You don't deserve to live here. You never will." The words hung heavy, undeniable. Gasps. Reporters surged forward. Microphones shot out. Henderson barked from the back, voice booming. "There it is. You heard her. That's the truth she's been hiding." Chaos erupted. Neighbors shouted, some in outrage, others in shame. Deputies stepped forward, unsure whether to intervene. Whitmore realized, too late, what she'd said. Her lawyer tugged her sleeve, whispering frantically. Cameras caught every second. Marcus didn't move. His silence was louder than any rebuttal. The fall within minutes. The meeting collapsed. The lawyer called for adjournment, but the damage was done. Reporters swarmed Whitmore, firing questions. Neighbors filmed, whispering, pointing. The deputies stepped toward Marcus. For a moment, he braced, but one simply murmured, "You're free to go, sir." Henderson hobbled up, pride shining through tired eyes. She showed herself. "Son, didn't even need you to fight. She burned her own house down." Marcus exhaled. Tension. Justice doesn't always come with a gavel. Sometimes it just needs a microphone. After Mathofta, the air was crisp, the sky clearing. News crews swarmed, but Marcus pushed past, refusing to be reduced to a soundbite. Back home, he sat on his porch. For the first time in weeks, it felt like his porch, not a battlefield. Kids played down the street. Neighbors who had avoided his gaze now offered cautious nods. Henderson joined him, lowering himself onto the step with a grunt. "You won today, but it ain't over. Folks like Whitmore don't vanish. They get replaced. The system keeps breeding them." Marcus nodded slowly. "Then we keep standing. Not just me. All of us." He looked at the community, flawed, fractured, but still his. The fight had carved scars, but it had also cracked silence. People had seen. People had spoken. That was enough for now. Marcus leaned back, the weight on his shoulders lighter, though never gone. He knew this wasn't victory, it was survival. And survival, sometimes, was the loudest act of defiance. The moon rose, casting pale light across Maplewood Estates. For the first time, Marcus didn't see prison bars in those white fences. He saw a battlefield won, and a home reclaimed. The dust didn't settle immediately. It never did. Whitmore's words had gone viral before the meeting even adjourned. Clips spread like wildfire, neighbors sharing, reporters amplifying, strangers online dissecting every pause, every glare, every syllable of her venom. By morning, her reputation was ash. The board scrambled, lawyers withdrew, and sponsors she'd bragged about suddenly denied knowing her. Within a week, she resigned for personal reasons, her name forever branded as the face of bigotry in a quiet suburb. But Marcus knew better. It wasn't just her. It never was. A new morning, a week later, Marcus walked his block in daylight for the first time since moving in. No blinds drawn, no back routes, just a man, his neighborhood, his dignity intact. Children waved. Some parents still looked away, but others managed a hesitant smile. The silence that once strangled the street had cracked. On Henderson's porch, the old man raised his cane in salute. "Told you, son. Son always comes back around." Marcus chuckled softly. "Wasn't the son I was worried about." Henderson grunted. "But you stood your ground. That's what matters. They saw it. Can't unsee it." Neighbors, speak that afternoon. A knock came at Marcus's door. It was the young woman who had filmed the HOA's thugs weeks earlier. Her voice shook. "I just wanted to say thank you. For not giving up. For fighting back when the rest of us stayed quiet." Marcus studied her, seeing the shame behind her gratitude. "You did more than most. You recorded truth. That power." Tears welled in her eyes. "I should have spoken sooner." He shook his head gently. We all speak when we're ready. Just promise you won't stay quiet next time. She nodded, a weight lifting. The cold days later, Marcus sat on his porch, the quiet almost unfamiliar. His phone buzzed, an old contact from his Navy days. You've been busy, the voice teased. Made the news over here. They're calling you the homeowner who fought back. Marcus exhaled. Not the title I asked for. Maybe not. But you reminded people that silence is a choice, and that fighting doesn't always mean fists. Marcus was quiet. The words cut deep. Feels less like a victory, more like survival. Survival is victory, especially when the odds are stacked. Henderson's lesson that evening. Henderson shuffled over, lowering himself into the porch chair beside Marcus. The air smelled of cut grass and barbecue smoke from down the street. For the first time in weeks, it smelled like home. You know, Henderson began, when I was your age, we had men like Whitmore running whole towns, not just boards, sheriffs, judges, mayors, whole damn systems. We fought, but it cost us jobs, homes, lives. Marcus listened, silent. But you, Henderson, pointed his cane. You didn't just fight her. You made her expose herself. That's rare. That's powerful. Marcus swallowed. Doesn't feel like enough. Never will. That's the curse. But it plants seeds. Seeds that outlive us. The farewell of the next HOA meeting was quieter, smaller, without shadow. The board stumbled, trying to piece itself together. Neighbors debated policies, not people. Rules, not race. Marcus sat in the back, arms crossed, listening. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence was reminder enough. When the meeting ended, a board member approached awkwardly. Mr. Reed, I just want to say, things will be different. We'll try to do better. Marcus met his eyes. Trying isn't enough. Do better. The man nodded, shame flushing his face. Closing the circle that night, Marcus stood in his backyard, staring at the fence that once felt like a cage. The moonlight traced its lines. No longer bars, but boundaries he owned. Henderson's words echoed. Seeds that outlive us, Marcus whispered to himself. Not as soldier, not as victim, but as man reclaiming his space. This is my home, and no one will take that from me again. The quiet wasn't empty anymore. It was earned. Epilogue, lasting impact. Weeks later, headlines moved on, but the echoes lingered. Neighbors remembered. Kids grew up knowing silence wasn't neutral. Henderson passed along the story like a sermon on his porch. The young woman who filmed spoke louder at every meeting, and Marcus, he remained, not just as a homeowner, but as a reminder, because sometimes survival wasn't retreat. It was standing your ground until the world was forced to reckon with you. And in Maplewood Estates, they would never forget the day a Navy SEAL taught them the cost of bias, the weight of truth, and the strength of a man who refused to be erased.